Good morning and welcome back to week 14 of developmental psychology. We are into the home stretch, the last lap, however you want to call it. I like track, so that's my reference, the last lap. We've entered the stadium. No, I don't like long distance running. When you're running a marathon. Oh, anyway, let's go talk about cohabitation. Uh, and So, as we are sliding into the last few weeks on covering old age, I think we finished middle age and talking about old age. I invite you to enjoy that last assignment or last couple of assignments. I think this week you're dealing with old uh, elderly and their housing arrangements. Just remember all the cool stuff is, now we're really talking about the part of the course where we're dealing with things that you haven't experienced yet. So there's less in terms of illustration. Um, what I like really about talking about old age and middle age and old age with people who haven't really experienced it yet is it kind of gives you an idea about what you might uh, experience yourself as you inevitably you will age and get older. So what I really would like you to kind of try to glean out of all that discussion and reading and stuff is that these are not just the result of aging, wrinkling, less hair, or whatever. But what we're talking about are folks and people nearing the end of their lives and seeing the value that they have been able to produce in the world around them. So let's turn our attention to finishing last week's discussion, which is on the issue of cohabitation. And what I like about this issue is that this is truly a generational thing, because in certain generations we just simply look at things differently. There's a different philosophy of life. For older people, um, when they look at things like marriage as an institution, they're seeing it as a commitment between two people. A couple of you mentioned the word contract, but it's actually, that is a millennial word, because older people don't look at marriage as like a contract. They look at it more as a covenant, because they're seeing that two people are committed to something, whether they really like each other or not all the time. They definitely have this institution and they're committed to working and becoming and all that. And younger people don't see it like that. I think a couple of you mentioned. I'll mention Ashley because you said you used the word convenience, or at least your implication is that there's a practicality to cohabitation that replaces marriage because it's just plain convenient. Khadija you had an interesting perspective. Like, this is a very logical next step in a relationship. When you find that person, that this is just one step. You wouldn't want to skip a step, right? Um, and I, we have to look at these institutions, try to understand people where they're coming from, because if you're if you're younger and you're looking at cohabitation, the the idea of living together being a bad thing or dooming your marriage or whatever is very, very foreign, because one, it is a trend. I think Tracy mentioned it really is a trend, and so we have to live in the world in which we're living. We have to take take part in the institutions that are part of it. Um, and so, because people today are probably not really raised so much to look at life being about developing as people, but more as but finding the right circumstances and making the circumstances of your life very conducive to yourself, then that shifts the whole perspective. Okay. Um, I think Sarah, you mentioned this, and you kind of maybe understand what I'm saying about the older generation. You said, well, the people didn't have any other choice but to work to make it. Okay. And that's what I'm talking about, that kind of philosophy. When we live in a world with a different philosophy, then we have a different set of parameters for our behaviors. So if we look at cohabitation as, well, of course I do that because this is my opportunity to see if I can live with the other person, if the other person's faults are going to be, the deal breaker or whatever. Well, if you're older, you may not have a tendency to look at things like that. You might have a tendency to say, I want to be a better person. And so the fault then would be, am I enough? Anyway, I just wanted to share with you that this is what developmental psychology is about. It's not memorizing a bunch of facts about human development as much as it's an opportunity to see how age and the cohorts and the dominant philosophy of the day helps to shape us, so that one day when you are interacting with people, that you'll be able to ask the right questions so that you can understand them, not necessarily agree with them, and not necessarily change the way you think, but necessarily understand their intent and where they're coming from so that you can have better communication with them. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you week 15.